The champagne bottle exploded against our living room wall at 11:51 p.m. on a Tuesday, and that's when I knew my marriage was over. "You're insane!" Ashley screamed, mascara streaming down her face like war paint. "It was just one mistake." One mistake. As if accidentally ordering the wrong coffee was equivalent to what I'd just discovered. As if sleeping with my business partner for 6 months while I worked 80-hour weeks to build our future was a simple oopsie. My name is Ryan Caldwell, and 12 hours ago I thought I had everything figured out. I'm 34, co-owner of a mid-sized logistics company in Charlotte, North Carolina, married to my college sweetheart for 9 years, father to 2 beautiful kids, Emma, age 7, and Noah, age 5. We had the house in the suburbs, the golden retriever, the whole American dream package. Then I came home early from a business trip. The flight from Atlanta got canceled due to weather, so instead of spending another night in a hotel, I grabbed a rental car and drove the 4 hours back. I texted Ashley around 6 p.m. that I'd be home by 10. She never responded, which wasn't unusual. She often fell asleep early with the kids. I pulled into our driveway at 9:53 p.m. The house was dark except for the master bedroom window. Good, I thought. She's still awake. The front door was unlocked. Also not unusual in our quiet neighborhood. I dropped my bag in the foyer, kicked off my shoes, and headed upstairs. The kids' doors were closed. They were spending the night at Ashley's parents' house, something she'd arranged earlier that week. "I need a break," she'd said. "Your mom and dad offered to take them for a night." I should have questioned it. Should have wondered why she needed a break when I was the one traveling constantly. Our bedroom door was cracked open about 6 inches. I heard voices. Ashley's laugh, that high-pitched giggle she only did when she was really happy. And then another voice. Male. Familiar. My hand froze on the doorknob. "We have to be more careful," the male voice said. "Ryan's getting suspicious." "Ryan doesn't notice anything anymore," Ashley replied. "He's too busy with the company. Besides, he trusts you completely." The floor beneath me seemed to tilt. I knew that voice. I'd heard it nearly every day for the past 3 years. Blake Patterson, my business partner, my friend. The guy I'd trusted with half my company and apparently all of my wife. I didn't burst in. I didn't scream. Instead, I pulled out my phone, turned off the sound, and started recording. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it twice, but I managed to capture 4 minutes of conversation that left no doubt about what was happening. They talked about their plans, how they'd been seeing each other since last March, 6 months, how they'd been careful, meeting at hotels during my business trips, how Blake had convinced Ashley that I was too focused on work to be a good husband anymore. "He doesn't make you feel special like I do," Blake said. "No," Ashley agreed. "He doesn't." That's when I stopped recording. Not because I'd heard enough. I had more than enough. But because if I stood there one more second, I was going to do something I'd regret. I walked back downstairs, grabbed my bag, and left. Got in the rental car and drove to a hotel near the airport. Checked in under my name, went to my room, and sat on the edge of the bed for 3 hours, staring at nothing. The next morning, Wednesday, I called in sick to work. First time in 5 years. Then I called Jeremy Walsh, a divorce attorney whose name I remembered from a charity golf tournament. His secretary said he could see me that afternoon. Jeremy's office was downtown, 20th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He was mid-40s, graying at the temples, with the kind of calm demeanor that probably cost $400 an hour. "Tell me everything," he said after we shook hands. I did, showed him the recording. Explained about the business partnership with Blake, the company we'd built from nothing, the shared assets, the complications. Jeremy listened without interrupting, taking notes on a legal pad. When I finished, he set down his pen and leaned back in his chair. North Carolina is one of the few states that still recognizes alienation of affection, he said. You can sue Blake Patterson for destroying your marriage. I can sue him? For damages, yes. If we can prove he engaged in a romantic relationship with your wife and that relationship caused the breakdown of your marriage, which this recording strongly suggests, you have a case. We've seen awards ranging from tens of thousands to over $1 million, depending on circumstances. $1 million. From my business partner. The irony wasn't lost on me. What about the company? I asked. That's more complicated. How is ownership structured? 50-50 split. We incorporated 3 years ago. Equal shares, equal decision-making power. Jeremy frowned. That's going to be messy. In a divorce, your wife is entitled to half of your marital assets, which includes your share of the company. But we can argue that Blake's actions constitute a breach of fiduciary duty and potentially fraud, depending on how he's handled company finances. He handles the books, I said quietly. I manage operations and client relations. He's always been the numbers guy. Then we need a forensic accountant yesterday. If he's been planning this with your wife, there's a chance he's been moving assets. The champagne bottle incident happened that night, after I finally went home. The champagne bottle exploded against the wall 6 inches from my head, foam and glass raining down onto the hardwood floor. Ashley stood in the center of our living room, her face contorted with rage, mascara already streaking her cheeks. You had no right to record us, she screamed. I stayed near the door, keys still in my hand. I had every right. This is my house, my marriage. It was one mistake, Ryan. One mistake and you're going to destroy everything? The audacity of it, calling 6 months one mistake, would have been laughable if my chest wasn't so tight I could barely breathe. I'd rehearsed this confrontation during the drive from Jeremy's office, planned what I'd say, how I'd maintain control. But standing here, watching her perform outrage when she should be begging forgiveness, all my preparation evaporated. Blake, I said. Of all people, Blake? She wrapped her arms around herself. You're never here. You're always working, always on trips. Trips for our business, the business that pays for this house, for Emma's piano lessons, for Noah's preschool. I took a step closer, glass crunching under my shoe. The business Blake and I built together while you were doing what exactly? Screwing my partner in hotel rooms? Her hand shot out, connecting with my cheek before I could react. The slap echoed in the quiet house. We stood there, frozen, her hand still raised, my face stinging. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Emma or Noah, probably awake now, listening to their parents destroy each other. Pack a bag, I said quietly. You're leaving tonight. This is my house too. Pack a bag. Each word came out harder than the last. Or I play that recording for your mother right now. Your choice. Her face went white. Whatever she'd expected tonight, it wasn't this. She'd probably imagined tears, accusations, maybe a dramatic reconciliation where I forgave her weakness and we went to counseling. The script she'd written in her head didn't include me having evidence, having already consulted an attorney, having a plan. She grabbed her purse from the couch and headed for the stairs. I followed at a distance, making sure she went to the guest room and not to wake the children. 15 minutes later, she emerged with an overnight bag, her face freshly washed but her eyes red and swollen. Where am I supposed to go? Blake's place seems appropriate. I opened the front door. Or a hotel. I genuinely don't care. The kids, we'll be here when you're ready to have a calm conversation about custody arrangements, through attorneys. She paused at the threshold, and for a moment I thought she might actually apologize, might show some genuine remorse. Instead, she said, "You're going to regret this. Blake warned me you'd be vindictive." I closed the door in her face and turned the deadbolt. The house felt different with her gone. Lighter somehow, despite the weight pressing on my chest. I cleaned up the broken glass and champagne, wiped down the wall, opened windows to air out the alcohol smell. Normal tasks, controllable tasks, things I could fix, unlike the wreckage of my marriage. At 1:30 a.m., I checked on Emma and Noah. Both asleep, thank God. Emma clutched her stuffed rabbit, her face peaceful in the nightlight's glow. Noah had kicked off his covers as usual. I tucked him back in, kissed his forehead, and allowed myself exactly 30 seconds of standing in his doorway, imagining how to explain this to them. Then I went downstairs and called Blake. He answered on the third ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Ryan? What? Ashley just showed up at your place?" Silence. Then, carefully, "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that I know everything. 6 months of everything." More silence. I could picture him sitting up in bed, his mind racing through options, calculating his next move. Blake had always been the strategic one, the chess player who thought 5 moves ahead. "We should talk," he finally said. "Face to face, like adults. We'll talk through attorneys. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for Friday. You're being removed as CFO pending a forensic audit." "You can't do that." "Actually, I can. Check the operating agreement, section 4.3. In cases of breach of fiduciary duty or conduct detrimental to the company, either partner can suspend the other's operational authority pending resolution." I'd spent an hour with Jeremy going through every clause. "You wrote that section yourself, remember? After that incident with the warehouse manager." His breathing changed, became harder. "This is about Ashley, not the business. You're mixing personal. You made it about the business when you started screwing my wife while having access to our financial records. For all I know, you've been moving money around for months, setting yourself up for when this blew up. You would never sleep with your business partner's wife, because you did that. So forgive me if your word doesn't mean much right now." I was pacing the kitchen, my free hand clenched into a fist. "The forensic accountant starts Monday. Every transaction, every expense report, every invoice for the last 2 years. If you've been clean, you've got nothing to worry about." "Ryan, listen to me." I hung up. My phone immediately started buzzing, Blake calling back. I declined it. He called again. Declined. On the third attempt, I blocked his number. Then I called Jeremy Walsh, knowing I'd wake him but not caring. "This better be important," he answered, his voice gravelly. "I confronted Ashley. She's out of the house. Blake knows I know." A pause, then I heard rustling. Jeremy sitting up, probably reaching for the legal pad he kept on his nightstand. "What exactly did you say to Blake?" I recounted the conversation word for word. Jeremy listened without interrupting. "All right," he said when I finished. "First thing tomorrow, today, I'm filing for a temporary restraining order to freeze all business accounts and assets pending the audit. Blake's going to lawyer up fast, and the first thing his attorney will tell him to do is move money. Can he do that? Legally? He can try. Whether he succeeds depends on how fast we move." Keys clicked in the background, Jeremy typing. "I'm also going to recommend we accelerate the divorce filing. Get ahead of whatever narrative Blake and Ashley are constructing." "What narrative?" "The one where you're the abusive husband who drove your wife into another man's arms. Where you're using the business as leverage to control her. Where you're unstable and shouldn't have custody of the children." His tone was matter-of-fact, clinical. "It's the standard playbook. They'll paint you as the villain to justify their behavior." My stomach turned. "Emma and Noah. We'll be fine. You haven't done anything wrong. But you need to be strategic about every interaction from here on out. No angry texts, no confrontations, no showing up at Blake's place at 3 a.m. Everything you do, assume it'll be presented to a judge." I looked around the kitchen, at the coffee maker Ashley used every morning. at Noah's artwork on the refrigerator, at the family calendar still showing our anniversary dinner reservation for next month. Evidence of a life that had been a lie. What about the alienation of affection suit? I asked. We'll discuss that in detail at our meeting Friday. But Ryan? Jeremy's voice softened slightly. Get some sleep. You can't think clearly when you're running on adrenaline and rage. After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and started documenting everything I could remember about Blake's behavior over the past 6 months. Every business trip he'd encouraged me to take. Every time he'd offered to check in on Ashley and the kids while I was gone. Every financial decision that had seemed slightly off, but that I'd trusted him on because he was my partner, my friend. The list grew longer than I wanted it to be. At 4:17 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Ashley, using my mom's phone since you blocked me. We need to talk about the children. I stared at the message. She was already playing the concerned mother card, already positioning herself as the reasonable one. I typed back, have your attorney contact mine, Jeremy Walsh, Walsh and Associates. Her response came immediately. You're really going to do this? Destroy our family over one mistake? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to type so many things. I wanted to list every lie, every betrayal, every moment she'd looked me in the eye and smiled while planning her next hotel rendezvous with Blake. I wanted to ask how she could call 6 months one mistake with a straight face. Instead, I wrote, you destroyed our family. I'm just documenting it. Then I blocked her mother's number too. The forensic accountant's preliminary findings arrived Thursday morning, 3 days after I'd suspended Blake. I was sitting at my kitchen table, the same table where Ashley and I had shared 1,000 meals, when the encrypted email landed in my inbox at 6:47 a.m. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours any night that week. Emma and Noah were still asleep upstairs. My mother had flown in from Raleigh to help with the kids while I navigated the wreckage. The subject line read, Initial Review, Patterson Access Points. I opened it. The accountant, a woman named Victoria Brennan, whom Jeremy had recommended, didn't waste words. Her preliminary scan had identified 17 suspicious transactions over the past 8 months. Wire transfers to an LLC I'd never heard of. Vendor payments to companies with no delivery records. A $47,000 consulting fee paid to an entity registered in Delaware 3 weeks ago. All authorized by Blake's electronic signature. All routed through accounts I rarely monitored because I'd trusted him with the financial operations while I focused on logistics and client relations. I read the email twice, my coffee going cold in my hand. Victoria estimated the total exposure at somewhere between $180,000 and $340,000, pending deeper analysis. She'd need another week for the complete audit. My phone buzzed. Jeremy. You see Victoria's email? He asked without preamble. Just read it. This changes everything. I'm filing an emergency motion this afternoon to freeze all business accounts and Blake's personal assets. We're also amending the alienation of affection suit to include fraud and embezzlement claims. I stared out the window at the oak tree in my backyard. Ashley had wanted to hang a tire swing from that tree last summer. I'd been too busy with a contract negotiation to get around to it. How bad can this get? I asked. For Blake? Criminal charges are likely. For the company? Depends on whether clients or vendors were affected. For you? Jeremy paused. You're the victim here, Ryan, but you're also 50% owner of a company that may have committed fraud, even if you didn't know about it. I didn't. I believe you. But we need to get ahead of this. I'm recommending you retain separate counsel for the business, someone who specializes in corporate litigation. I can handle the divorce and the personal lawsuit against Blake, but if this gets messy with regulatory agencies or civil suits from affected parties, you'll need a specialist. After we hung up, I sat in the silence of my kitchen and tried to calculate how thoroughly Blake had destroyed my life. He'd slept with my wife, stolen from my company, positioned me as either complicit or incompetent. The operating agreement we'd signed 3 years ago had seemed so straightforward then. Equal partnership, equal authority, equal trust. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. This is getting out of hand." B. I blocked it immediately. 30 seconds later, another unknown number. "Ryan, please, let me explain about the money. It's not what you think." I took a screenshot and forwarded it to Jeremy, then blocked that number too. The third attempt came from an email address I didn't recognize, but the subject line gave it away. "From Blake. Please read." I deleted it without opening it. By Friday afternoon, the situation had metastasized. Jeremy's emergency motion had succeeded in freezing the business accounts, which meant Blake couldn't move any more money. It also meant I couldn't access operating capital without court approval. Our largest client, a regional distribution company that accounted for 30% of our revenue, had called that morning asking pointed questions about financial irregularities. Someone had talked. Blake, probably, trying to control the narrative. I spent 2 hours on the phone with the client's operations director, a man named Gary Simmons, who'd worked with me for 18 months. I explained the situation in carefully neutral terms. Internal audit, temporary freeze, no impact on service delivery, full transparency forthcoming. Gary listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Ryan, I've always appreciated your straight shooting, but I've got a fiduciary responsibility here. I'm going to need documentation that our contract funds weren't part of whatever happened." "You'll have it by Monday." "I hope so, because if I don't, I'll need to recommend we suspend the contract pending resolution." After he hung up, I sat in my home office, the spare bedroom I'd converted 2 years ago, and did the math. Losing the Simmons account would cut our revenue by a third. Blake's theft had already drained our reserves. The legal fees were mounting by the hour. The company I'd built from nothing might not survive this. My mother knocked softly on the door. "Ryan, the kids want to know if you'll have dinner with them." I checked my watch. 5:15 p.m. I'd been staring at spreadsheets for 3 hours. "Yeah, of course." Emma asked about Ashley during dinner. "When's Mom coming home?" I'd been dreading this question all week. My mother had told the kids that Ashley was taking a little trip and that Grandma was visiting to help out. Emma, 7 years old and sharp as a tack, wasn't buying it. "I'm not sure, sweetheart." "Is she mad at you?" Noah, 5 and still mostly oblivious, was focused on pushing peas around his plate. Emma watched me with her mother's eyes. "It's complicated," I said. "Grown-up stuff." "Are you getting divorced?" My mother's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "Emma, Sophia's parents got divorced last year. She has 2 houses now, 2 Christmases." I set down my fork. "Your mom and I are having some problems right now, but whatever happens, you and Noah are the most important thing. You understand that?" Emma nodded slowly. "Can I call her?" "Not tonight. Maybe this weekend." The truth was that Ashley had been calling and texting constantly, alternating between tearful apologies and accusations that I was keeping her from her children. Jeremy had advised supervised visitation only, pending the custody evaluation. Ashley's attorney had objected. The judge had scheduled a hearing for next Thursday. After I put the kids to bed, I found my mother in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. "You're going to have to tell them something more substantial," she said without looking up. "I know." Emma's scared. She thinks this is somehow her fault. It's not. Of course it's not. But she's 7. She doesn't understand why her mother disappeared. I leaned against the counter. "What am I supposed to say? Your mother was sleeping with my business partner, and oh, by the way, he's been stealing from the company too?" My mother closed the dishwasher and turned to face me. You say that you and Ashley are separating, that sometimes adults make mistakes and can't stay married, that it has nothing to do with Emma or Noah, that both of you love them very much. Ashley made her choices. I'm not defending Ashley. My mother's voice was firm. What she did was inexcusable. But those kids need stability right now, and you're the only one who can give it to them. She was right. I knew she was right. But every time I thought about having that conversation, about explaining to my children that their family was broken, something in my chest constricted. Saturday morning brought a new development. Blake's attorney filed a counter motion arguing that the account freeze was damaging the business, and that Blake should be reinstated with limited authority pending the audit's completion. The motion included an affidavit from Blake, claiming the suspicious transactions were legitimate business expenses that I had mischaracterized due to personal animus. Jeremy called at 8:30 a.m., waking me from the first decent sleep I'd had in a week. He's playing offense, Jeremy said, trying to make this about your reaction instead of his actions. Will it work? Not if Victoria's audit backs up what we found. But it'll drag things out. He's also asking for access to the kids. That woke me up completely. What? Blake filed a declaration saying he's been a father figure to Emma and Noah for the past 3 years. That suspending his contact with them is harmful. I was out of bed now, pacing. He's not their father. He's not family. He's making himself sympathetic, the devoted family friend caught in the crossfire of a bitter divorce. That's insane. It's strategy, and it might work if we're not careful. The text from Ashley arrived at 2:47 p.m. Thursday, 3 hours before the emergency custody hearing. We need to talk. About Blake's filing. I can explain. I stared at the message while sitting in Jeremy's conference room, surrounded by bankers' boxes filled with the forensic audit documentation Victoria had delivered that morning. The complete picture was worse than preliminary estimates. $427,000 over 14 months, not 8. Blake had been methodical, patient, and apparently confident enough to accelerate in recent weeks. Don't respond, Jeremy said without looking up from the financial statements. Nothing good comes from communication right now. My phone buzzed again. He's doing this to hurt you, not because he cares about Emma and Noah. You know that. Then a third message. I never told him about their school schedules or activities. He's using public records and making it sound like he was involved. Please. I set the phone face down on the mahogany table. She's trying to distance herself from his visitation filing. Of course she is. Jeremy made a notation on his legal pad. Judge Brennan, no relation to your forensic accountant, won't look kindly on a mother who facilitated her affair partner's access to her children. Ashley's attorney probably told her to create a paper trail showing she opposed Blake's involvement. Will it work? Depends on what else we find. He tapped the financial statement in front of him. Victoria flagged something interesting in the corporate communications audit. Blake accessed the company email server remotely on 17 occasions over the past 6 months. Always between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. Always from an IP address that traces to your home network. The floor didn't tilt anymore when these revelations hit. I'd developed a tolerance. He was at my house, in my home office. While you were traveling, presumably. The dates correlate with your business trip calendar. Jeremy slid a printed spreadsheet across the table. On 3 of those occasions, he transferred funds the following morning. Always under $15,000 to avoid automatic reporting triggers. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he needed access to documentation you kept on your home computer. Ashley gave him my office passwords. That would be my assumption. We can't prove it directly, but the pattern is damning. He removed his reading glasses. Here's what concerns me more. Blake filed incorporation papers in Delaware 2 weeks ago. New company called Patterson Logistics Solutions. Silent partner listed as A.M. Brennan Holdings, LLC. I processed that for 3 seconds. Ashley's maiden name is Brennan. Correct. The LLC was formed in Wyoming. Minimal disclosure requirements. 1 week after Blake's first large transfer from your company accounts. I've subpoenaed the banking records, but I'd bet my retainer that $427,000 didn't disappear into thin air. It capitalized their new venture. The anger that surfaced was cold and clarifying. They were planning to take my company's clients. More than planning. Victoria found email drafts on Blake's work computer that he forgot to delete. Outreach to your top 15 accounts, offering continuity of service under new management at reduced rates. None were sent yet, but the infrastructure was in place. My guess is they were waiting for the right moment. What moment? Jeremy's expression was grim. For you to be sufficiently destabilized that you'd sell out cheap or let the company collapse. Blake files for emergency partnership dissolution, claims the business is failing due to your erratic behavior following the affair discovery, and offers to buy your stake at distressed valuation. You're too buried in divorce proceedings to fight effectively. He walks away with the client relationships and operating procedures, leaves you with the debt and overhead. My phone buzzed again. I ignored it. How do we prove Ashley was complicit? The LLC formation is circumstantial but suggestive. If we can demonstrate she had knowledge of the embezzlement or actively facilitated Blake's access to company resources, that impacts custody and asset division significantly. He checked his watch. Judge Brennan is old school. She doesn't tolerate parental alienation or introducing unstable elements into children's lives. Blake's visitation filing was a tactical error. It makes the affair look less like a mistake and more like a planned relationship. Combined with evidence of financial conspiracy, it paints Ashley as someone who prioritized her affair over her children's stability. What about the business? Can we save it? The court will unfreeze operating accounts once we demonstrate the embezzled funds are traced and segregated. That happens tomorrow morning when Victoria presents her final report. You'll have access to working capital by Monday, but the damage to client relationships? He trailed off diplomatically. Already done. Some of it. But here's your leverage. Blake's new company can't legally solicit your clients while he's still a 50% owner. Non-compete clauses in your partnership agreement are enforceable. If he tries to poach accounts before the partnership is formally dissolved, you can sue for tortious interference and breach of fiduciary duty. That buys you time to stabilize operations. My phone lit up with a call. Ashley. I declined it. She's panicking, Jeremy observed. Her attorney probably just explained how the LLC formation looks to a family court judge. If Ashley can be shown to have participated in depleting marital assets to fund a separate venture with her affair partner, she's not just losing custody leverage, she's potentially facing criminal exposure as an accomplice to embezzlement. Good. He gave me a measured look. Ryan, I need you to stay focused on the strategic objective. Revenge feels satisfying, but our goal is protecting your children and your business interests. If Ashley is willing to testify against Blake in exchange for favorable divorce terms, that's a weapon we should consider using. She doesn't get favorable terms. She gets less unfavorable terms in exchange for cooperation that puts Blake in prison and recovers your capital. That's the calculation. He stood and gathered his files. We're due in court in 2 hours. Judge Brennan will review Blake's visitation petition and the preliminary custody evaluation. The evaluator interviewed Emma and Noah yesterday. You haven't asked me what they said. Because I was afraid to know? Tell me. Noah said Blake came to the house lots of times when you were traveling. Said he brought pizza and watched movies with them. Emma was more circumspect. Said Blake was Mom's friend, and that they were told not to mention his visits because it would make Dad feel bad about working so much. The cold anger crystallized into something harder. Ashley coached them. Almost certainly. But Emma's 7, and she's smart enough to know something was wrong about the secrecy. The evaluator noted that Emma became anxious when discussing Blake, while Noah seemed genuinely fond of him. That's actually helpful. It shows Blake cultivated a relationship with your children deliberately, which supports the argument that his visitation filing is manipulative rather than genuinely motivated by their welfare. My phone buzzed with a voicemail notification. I didn't check it. The evaluator's recommendation? Supervised visitation for Ashley pending resolution of the criminal investigation into the embezzlement. No contact between Blake and the children under any circumstances. Temporary primary custody to you with a follow-up evaluation in 90 days. He paused. It's a strong recommendation, Ryan. Judge Brennan usually follows the evaluator's guidance unless there's compelling reason not to. What's the catch? Ashley's attorney will argue that you're using the business dispute to weaponize the children against their mother. They'll claim Blake's relationship with Emma and Noah is being mischaracterized, that he was simply a family friend who happened to be present during normal social occasions. They'll say your discovery of the affair has caused you to reinterpret innocent interactions as sinister, while ignoring that he's filing for visitation rights to children who aren't his. Correct, which is why his filing undermines their argument. You can't simultaneously claim someone was just a casual family friend and argue they deserve court-ordered access to minor children. Jeremy held the door open. Let's go win this. The voicemail was from Ashley. I listened to it in the car. Her voice was ragged, stripped of the defensive edge from our last conversation. Ryan, please. Blake told me he was going to file that motion. I told him not to. I told him it would make everything worse, but he said he wanted to maintain his relationship with the kids because we were going to be together. I didn't know about the money. I swear I didn't know he was stealing from the company. He said he was planning to buy you out, that he'd made some good investments and could offer you a fair price so you could start fresh without the stress. I believed him. A pause. Breathing. I know you won't forgive me. I'm not asking you to. But please don't let him use our children as leverage against you. Whatever else I've done, I never wanted them hurt. Please. I deleted the message as Jeremy's Mercedes pulled into the courthouse parking garage. The tattoo parlor smelled like antiseptic and incense, a combination that reminded me of a hospital trying too hard to feel spiritual. I'd driven here on autopilot, my lawyer's words from this morning still echoing. We need to demonstrate Ashley's pattern of deception extends beyond the affair. Any additional evidence of dishonesty strengthens our custody case. The emergency hearing was in 4 days. 4 days to prove my children belonged with me, not with a woman who'd helped orchestrate the theft of nearly $500,000 from our company. I hadn't planned to get the tattoo touched up today. The small compass rose on my right shoulder blade had been Ashley's idea 3 years ago. Something about always finding our way back to each other. The irony wasn't lost on me now, but when Ashley's calendar notification had popped up on the shared family iPad this morning, touch-up apt, Ink and Soul, 2 p.m., I'd called and confirmed the appointment was still active. She'd forgotten to cancel it. Or maybe she just didn't care anymore. You're Ashley's husband, right? The artist, Kara, according to her name tag, was maybe 30, with full sleeve tattoos on both arms and a nose ring that caught the overhead light. She talks about you all the time. Does she? I settled into the leather chair, pulling off my shirt. Yeah, she's been in here a bunch lately. Kara examined my shoulder blade, her gloved fingers cool against my skin. This healed pretty well, actually. You sure you need a touch-up? Ashley scheduled it. I watched her in the mirror across from the chair. Said it was fading. Huh, Kara shrugged. Well, the customer's always right. This'll take maybe 20 minutes. You want me to go over the whole thing or just the edges? Whatever Ashley wanted done. I kept my voice neutral. She mentioned you guys did some matching work recently. Kara's face lit up. Oh my God, yes. Those were so cool. We did this whole his and hers set last month. Really intimate stuff, you know? Not the typical matching hearts or whatever. These were personal. My stomach tightened. Matching tattoos? Yeah, for her and her. Kara paused, and I watched her expression shift in the mirror as she realized something. Wait, you don't have matching tattoos. No, I said quietly. I don't. The buzzing of the tattoo gun filled the silence. Kara had gone very still behind me. When did she come in for this? I asked. Look, I don't want to get in the middle of anything. I'm not asking you to. I met her eyes in the mirror. I'm asking when my wife got matching tattoos with someone who isn't me. Kara set down the tattoo gun. 3 weeks ago, she came in with a guy. They had these designs they wanted, really specific, custom work. She called it a girls' tattoo night when she booked it, but she gestured vaguely. Obviously not a girl. 3 weeks ago, right before the forensic audit results came back. Right when Blake would have known the walls were closing in. What did they get? I can't really. Please. The word came out harder than I intended. My wife is trying to take my children away from me. I need to know what she's hiding. Kara studied me for a long moment, then walked to a filing cabinet in the corner. She pulled out a folder, flipped through several sheets of paper, and extracted 2 sketches. These are the stencils, she said, handing them to me. We keep copies for our records. The first sketch showed an infinity symbol with 2 dates woven into the design, 6/15 and 11/22. The second was a pair of coordinates, latitude and longitude numbers I didn't recognize, rendered in elegant script. What do the dates mean? I asked. She didn't say. The coordinates were for some place in the Outer Banks, I think. I looked them up out of curiosity. It's a beach access point near Nag's Head. June 15th. That was when Blake had joined the company as my partner. November 22nd was. I pulled out my phone, scrolling back through my calendar. A business trip to Atlanta. 3 days where I'd been gone, and Ashley had been home alone with the kids. Or so I'd thought. Where did they get the tattoos placed? Kara hesitated. Inner wrists, both of them. She got the coordinates, he got the dates. Inner wrists, visible every time they looked at each other, every time they held hands. Can I take these? I held up the stencils. Those are copies. You can have them. Kara's voice had gone soft. Look, I'm sorry. I didn't know she was. She seemed really happy. They both did. I folded the papers carefully and slid them into my jacket pocket. The touch-up can wait. What do I owe you for your time? Nothing. Seriously. She walked me to the door. For what it's worth, she never mentioned kids. If I'd known. The drive home took 40 minutes. I spent 39 of them gripping the steering wheel hard enough to make my knuckles ache, and 1 minute pulled over on the shoulder, staring at the stencil sketches spread across my passenger seat. Blake had been in my house, had sat at my dinner table, played with my children, slept in the guest room during the Super Bowl party I'd thrown in February. And the whole time, he'd been wearing Ashley's dates on his skin like a brand. The house was empty when I got back. Emma and Noah were at my mother's for the afternoon, part of the temporary custody arrangement. I went straight to the kitchen and found a permanent marker in the junk drawer. Ashley's last known address was a short-term rental near South Park, 15 minutes away. She'd moved there after our confrontation, taking only what she could fit in her SUV. I'd driven past it once just to know where my children were going when they visited her. I didn't remember the drive there. One moment, I was standing in my kitchen with a marker in my hand. The next, I was parked outside a bland townhouse complex, the stencils pressed against my forearm. The tattoos were simple enough to trace. I uncapped the marker and started with the coordinates, pressing hard enough that the numbers stood out dark and sharp against my skin. Then the infinity symbol with its woven dates. The marker bled slightly, making the lines look ragged and crude. Nothing like the professional work Kara would have done. But that was the point. I knocked on Ashley's door at 5:47 p.m. She answered wearing yoga pants and an old college sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. For a second, she looked like the woman I'd married, tired and casual and real. Then she saw my arm. "What the hell is that?" Her eyes went wide. I held up my forearm, displaying the crude marker tattoos. "You tell me." June 15th. That's when Blake became my partner. November 22nd. That's when I was in Atlanta and you told me you had the flu. Remember? You said you couldn't even get out of bed. Her face had gone pale. "How did you—" "The coordinates are for Nag's Head. I looked them up." I stepped closer, and she backed into her apartment. "Want to tell me what's at those coordinates, Ashley? Or should I drive down there and find out myself?" "You're insane." But her voice shook. "You can't just— You're stalking me now." "I had a tattoo appointment at Ink and Soul. Remember? You scheduled it." I showed her the stencils. "Kara was very helpful. Showed me the his and hers work you commissioned 3 weeks ago." The marker ink had barely dried on Ashley's skin when my phone buzzed. Jeremy Walsh. I stepped into the hallway, leaving Ashley on the couch, staring at the crude reproductions of her secret tattoos with something between horror and defiance. "Blake filed an emergency motion," Jeremy said without preamble. "He's claiming you've made terroristic threats against him and requesting a restraining order." "That's insane. I haven't contacted him in 3 days." "He submitted screenshots, text messages from your number, graphic descriptions of what you're allegedly planning to do to him." Jeremy's voice carried a note of concern I hadn't heard before. "Ryan, did you send these?" "Let me see them." He texted the screenshots. I scrolled through messages I'd never written, sent from my number at times I could account for. One sent at 2:47 a.m. Thursday, when I was asleep in the guest room. Another at 11:23 a.m. Friday, during my meeting with Victoria about the forensic audit. "Someone's spoofing my number," I said. "Or he has access to my phone somehow." "Can you prove where you were when these were sent?" I thought about Thursday night, alone in the guest room. No alibi. Friday morning, I'd been alone in my car driving to Victoria's office. Not conclusively. Then we have a problem. The judge granted a temporary restraining order. You can't contact Blake, can't go within 500 feet of him, and he's using this to argue you're unstable. Says it undermines your custody case. I looked back at Ashley through the doorway. She'd pulled her sleeves down, covering the marker ink. "He's escalating." "There's more. Blake filed a countersuit this afternoon. He's claiming you've been embezzling from the company, that the forensic audit is fabricated, and that you're trying to frame him because you discovered his affair with Ashley and couldn't handle it emotionally." The audacity was breathtaking. Victoria has the bank records, the transfers. He's claiming you had access to his accounts, that you made the transfers yourself and manipulated the audit trail. Jeremy paused. "Ryan, his attorney is Diane Cho. She doesn't take cases she can't win, and she doesn't come cheap. Blake's spending serious money on this defense, with funds he stole from me. Allegedly, that's the problem. Right now, it's your forensic accountant's analysis versus his denial and counter-accusation. We need something concrete that puts the theft solely on him." I thought about Blake's pattern. The remote access to my home computer. The systematic timing of the transfers during my business trips. What about the Nag's Head coordinates from the tattoos? What about them? Blake and Ashley got matching tattoos 3 weeks ago. Coordinates to a location in Nag's Head, along with dates that correspond to when Blake joined the company and when their affair likely started. I glanced at Ashley again. She was on her phone now, typing rapidly. What if there's something at that location? Evidence they wanted to memorialize? That's speculative. So, is his claim that I'm embezzling from my own company? I pulled up the coordinates on my phone. 35.99582 due to N, 75.6303 W. A quick search showed it was near a public beach access point. I'm driving down there. Ryan, you have the custody hearing Monday morning. You can't miss that. It's Saturday evening. Nag's Head is 4 hours away. I'll be back tomorrow. And if Blake finds out you left town, his attorney will argue you're fleeing, that you're unstable. I'm not asking for permission, Jeremy. I'm telling you what I'm doing. I ended the call. Ashley looked up as I walked back into the living room. Who was that? Blake got a restraining order against me. Claims I threatened him. Something flickered across her face. Not surprise. Ryan, you need to calm down. This whole thing… Did you know he was going to do that? What? No, I don't talk to Blake anymore. You made that very clear. Then why don't you look surprised? I picked up my keys from the counter. I'm going to Nag's Head, to the coordinates from your tattoos. Now she looked alarmed. There's nothing there. It's just a beach. Then I'll have wasted 4 hours. I headed for the door. Ryan, wait. She stood, pulling at her sleeves nervously. It's just where we first talked about everything, about us. It doesn't mean anything. When? What? When did you go there? Before or after you helped him steal from the company? I didn't help him steal anything. I didn't even know about the money until you told me. Her voice rose, defensive. Blake said you were the one moving money around, that you were paranoid about the business, that… So you did talk to him, after I told you not to. She pressed her lips together. Caught. When did you go to Nag's Head, Ashley? 3 weeks ago, the weekend you were in Atlanta. She sat back down, deflated. We rented a house for the weekend. That's where we got the tattoos. There's a parlor right on the main strip. What's the name? Why does it matter? What's the name of the tattoo parlor? Ink and Waves. But Ryan, they're not going to tell you anything. Client confidentiality or whatever. I was already searching for it on my phone. The shop had a website with photos of the artist's work, a booking system, and a gallery of recent tattoos. I scrolled through the gallery, looking for anything familiar. There. Posted 3 weeks ago. A photo of 2 hands clasped together, each wrist bearing a fresh tattoo. The coordinates. The dates. The caption read, "Matching anniversary ink for 2 of our favorite clients. Congrats B and A." The artist had tagged the post with her Instagram handle, Akelcy Ink and Waves. I clicked through to her profile. More tattoo photos, personal shots of beach sunsets, a few selfies. And then, buried in her stories archive from 3 weeks ago, a video of Blake and Ashley in the tattoo chair together, holding hands while Kelsey worked on Ashley's wrist. Blake's face was partially visible, laughing at something off camera. You documented it, I said quietly. You got tattoos together and let the artist post about it publicly. Ashley's face had gone pale. She wasn't supposed to show our faces. She promised. Blake's face is in her Instagram story, 3 weeks ago. I turned the phone toward her. Did you think I'd never find it? Or did you just not care? I didn't think you'd be stalking tattoo artists on social media. Her voice cracked. This is insane, Ryan. You're acting insane. Blake's attorney is using that argument too. Funny coincidence. I pocketed my phone. I'm going to Nag's Head. I'm going to find out what's really at those coordinates. And then I'm going to talk to Kelsey at Ink and Waves about what you and Blake discussed during your anniversary tattoo session. There's nothing to find. It's just a beach where we walked and talked. That's it. Then you have nothing to worry about. I left her sitting there, sleeves pulled down over the marker ink, phone clutched in her hand. By the time I reached my car, I could see her through the window, already calling someone. Let her warn him. Let Blake know I was coming. The drive to Nag's Head took just under 4 hours. I arrived at 11:30 p.m., the beach town quiet in the off-season. I pulled up the coordinates on my GPS and followed them to a public access point between two rental properties. A wooden walkway led over the dunes to the beach beyond. I grabbed my flashlight from the glove box and headed down the walkway. The ocean stretched out black and infinite under a sliver of moon. The coordinates pointed to a spot about 50 yards down the beach, near a cluster of rocks that jutted into the surf. I swept the flashlight across the sand, not sure what I was looking for. A buried cache? Some romantic gesture immortalized in the landscape? Then I saw it. Carved into the largest rock, protected from the tide by its position. B+A, followed by a date. 6 months ago. Right when the affair started, according to Victoria's timeline of the embezzlement. But below that, carved more recently based on the fresh edges. Patterson Logistics Solutions, Estier 2024. They'd carved their company name into the rock. The company they'd created with stolen money. The company they'd planned to use to destroy mine. I took photos from every angle, including close-ups that showed the fresh tool marks. Then I noticed something else. Initials carved in a different style, older, worn by weather. At least a dozen sets of initials scattered across the rock face. This was a popular spot for couples to leave their mark. But Blake and Ashley hadn't just left their initials. They'd claimed this rock for their business, their future together. I was photographing the company name when my phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Caldwell? A woman's voice, professional but tense. This is Kelsey from Ink and Waves. Your wife just called me. She said you might be coming by the shop and she wanted me to know not to talk to you about her tattoo session. Did she? Yeah, and honestly, that made me really uncomfortable. Because when they came in 3 weeks ago, she told me she was divorced. Both of them did. They said they were celebrating their 1-year anniversary of being together. I steadied myself against the rock. What else did they say? Look, I don't want to get in the middle of anything, but she just called me 20 minutes ago, crying, saying her husband was harassing her and that I shouldn't believe anything you said. And that doesn't match the woman who came in here 3 weeks ago, laughing about finally being free to be with the man she loved. Kelsey paused. I have kids. I have an ex-husband. I know what manipulation sounds like. Can you tell me exactly what they discussed during the session? I can do better than that. I recorded it. I record all my sessions for my portfolio and social media content. I haven't posted the full video because they asked me not to show their faces, but I still have the raw footage. My heart hammered. Would you be willing to share that with me? Can you be at the shop tomorrow morning? 10 a.m.? I'll be there. I stood in the parking lot of Ink and Waves at 9:45 a.m. Sunday morning, watching the ocean roll in across the street. The video Kelsey had sent to my phone at midnight had been everything Jeremy needed. 40 minutes of Blake and Ashley discussing their exit strategy while getting their anniversary tattoos, laughing about how I was too buried in spreadsheets to notice anything, planning which clients they'd approach first once Ryan finally gave up and sold out. Jeremy had filed emergency motions at 6 a.m. By 8:30, Judge Brennan had issued a warrant for Blake's arrest on embezzlement charges and suspended Ashley's visitation rights pending a full custody evaluation. My phone buzzed. Jeremy. Blake's attorney just called. He wants to negotiate a settlement, full restitution, signed confession, withdrawal of all counterclaims. In exchange, you don't pursue the alienation of affection suit or push for maximum criminal penalties. I watched a family walk past carrying beach chairs and coolers, the kids running ahead toward the water. Normal people living normal lives. What about the company? He signs over his full 50% stake for $1. You own Patterson Logistics outright. He agrees to a lifetime non-compete in the industry. Everything I'd built, finally mine alone. No partner to trust, no one to betray me. And Ashley? Separate negotiation. Her attorney is proposing supervised visitation, split of marital assets minus her portion of the embezzled funds, and she testifies against Blake at his criminal trial. In exchange, she avoids prosecution as an accomplice. I thought about Emma asking when her mother was coming home, about Noah, who still didn't understand why Grandma was staying with us, about the life I'd have to build for them now, as a single father running a company that had almost been destroyed. Tell Blake's attorney yes. Tell Ashley's attorney I want primary custody, and she gets supervised visitation every other weekend. She testifies fully and completely, or the deal's off. Done. Judge Brennan scheduled the final custody hearing for Friday. With Ashley's cooperation and the video evidence, this should be straightforward. Jeremy paused. You did it, Ryan. You protected your kids and your business. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the rock where Blake and Ashley had carved their future. The tide was coming in, waves washing over the base. In a few years, the salt water would wear away their names, their dates, their company that never was. I'd learned something in the past 3 weeks that I wished I'd understood earlier. Trust isn't the same as blindness. Love isn't the same as faith. And building something, a business, a marriage, a family, requires more than just working hard and hoping everyone else does their part. It requires paying attention. I drove back to Charlotte and arrived home at 2:30 p.m. My mother had Emma and Noah in the backyard, helping them plant flowers in the garden Ashley had always meant to start but never got around to. Emma saw me first and came running. Dad, we're planting sunflowers. I caught her in a hug, then Noah, who'd followed his sister across the lawn. They smelled like dirt and sunshine. Your mom and I are getting divorced, I said, kneeling down to their level. Do you know what that means? Emma nodded seriously. Noah looked uncertain. It means Mom and I won't be married anymore. We'll live in different houses. But we both still love you very much, and that will never change. Is it because of Blake? Emma asked quietly. I chose my words carefully. It's because your mom and I made mistakes, grown-up mistakes. But you didn't do anything wrong, neither of you. You understand? Noah threw his arms around my neck. Emma watched me with those sharp eyes that saw too much. Will we still see Mom? Yes. Not as much as before, but yes. And I'll be here every single day. She seemed to consider this, then nodded. Okay. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat in my home office and looked at the business documents Jeremy had sent over. Patterson Logistics, mine alone now. I'd have to rebuild the client relationships Blake had poisoned, restructure the finances he'd corrupted, hire new staff to replace the partner I'd lost. It would take years to fully recover. But I had something Blake and Ashley never did. I had a reason beyond myself. 2 reasons. Sleeping upstairs in their rooms, dreaming whatever children dream about when their world shifts beneath them. I deleted the marker-drawn tattoos from my arm with rubbing alcohol, watching the fake coordinates and false dates disappear. Then I pulled up the photo of the rock carving one last time before deleting it from my phone. Some monuments to betrayal didn't need to be preserved. 3 months later, Emma asked me if I was going to marry someone new someday. Maybe, I told her. Someday, but not for a long time. That's good, she said. I think you should be more careful next time. She was 7 years old and already wiser than I'd been at 34. I learned to notice things after that. To pay attention not just to spreadsheets and client contracts, but to the people in my life. To watch for the small inconsistencies that signal larger problems. To trust, yes, but to verify not through surveillance or suspicion, but through presence. The company recovered. Slowly, painfully, but it recovered. I brought in a new CFO with impeccable references and transparent practices. I turned down business trips I didn't absolutely need to take. I made it to Emma's piano recitals and Noah's soccer games. Blake served 18 months for embezzlement and paid back every dollar with interest. Ashley moved to Raleigh and saw the kids one weekend a month under supervision. She sent birthday cards and Christmas presents and maintained the awkward distance of someone who knows they destroyed something irreplaceable. I never did get that compass rose tattoo touched up. Let it fade, I thought. Let it disappear like the promises it represented. Some things are better left to wash away with time. The lesson, if there was one, wasn't about trust or betrayal or even justice. It was simpler than that. Pay attention to your life while you're living it. Notice the people you love. See the signs before they become catastrophes. And when the worst happens, when everything you built collapses, remember that the rubble can be cleared and something new can grow. Not the same. Never the same. But maybe, if you're careful and present and paying attention, something better,